Hello and Happy New Year, everybody. Welcome back to this mini-series about the Book of Sirach. This very dense, very rich book from the 2nd century before Christ, which is full of Jewish wisdom with a little bit of a sparkling of Hellenistic philosophy. Today I've chosen 3 passages from chapters 4 and 6 of the Book of Sirach. I think I'm going to continue this mini-series for 2 more episodes, and so I'm going to choose more passages from the following chapters in 2 brief additional videos. But the ones from today have to do with the topics of truth, of righteousness, and in particular, once again, of wisdom, which is one of the main preoccupations of Ben Sira. How young people in particular should learn to pursue wisdom and how they can develop wisdom in their life, and also why. Especially in today's relativistic society, we could find ourselves hearing or saying, well, yeah, somebody is wise, somebody is not. So somebody chooses to be wise, somebody actually chooses not to be, and they're perfectly legitimate choices. They're just equally valid choices. Ancient tradition tells us, no, they're not equally valid choices. To choose to be wise is enormously better. So, to begin with, I'm going to read from chapter 4, verse number 28, where Ben Sirach says, "Even to the death, fight for what is right, and the Lord will do battle for you." This is very interesting because when I read this verse in Italian, in my Italian Bible, the translation is slightly different. And the translation says, fight for the truth, fight for what is true instead of right, to the death, without saying even to the death. So in Italian, it comes across more direct, meaning it's an encouragement to risk your life for what is true. And what is right is translated in what is true. Very close, but not exactly the same thing. And the Lord will battle for you, will do battle for you. This is translated exactly the same in Italian as well. So there are 2 main concepts here that really strike me very hard. The first one is, this is a very pugnacious incitement to be very determined in your life. To the death, fight for what is right or fight for what is true. It reminds me of the famous neutrals, which are the first damned souls that Dante meets when he steps into the Inferno. The neutrals are the ones who never took a stand in their life. They never really fought for anything at all in their life, any principle. They never stood for anything. Wisdom, especially ancient wisdom, is so clear about colors, strong colors. Just fight for something. Just stand for something. Chesterton used to say, Christianity is about splendid white and really intense red. But it has a very healthy hatred of pink, of something that is a compromise, that is a little mediocre, not very intense. That's what Christianity is not about. The second concept that comes out of this little quote is, and the Lord will do battle for you. A very fundamental concept that comes through so much of the scriptures. So many times, God asks human beings, God asks us to do things that seem impossible to us. One perfect example would be to forgive. Forgive somebody who has wronged us in an unthinkable way. How can we forgive somebody who has done that particular thing to us, to our life? And over again, the Christian tradition keeps repeating, it's not an effort that you have to do by yourself. You move into that direction, and then God will do the heavy lifting for you. He will do the heavy lifting, because the tradition recognizes that it takes almost a supernatural power to act in a certain way that God asks us to do. But the good news is that it is possible and it is true that God actually helps us do certain things. Other examples are much more simple and normal. For example, the vow of celibacy. Vow of celibacy is something that takes almost a supernatural strength to maintain, and it requires the divine help, and God helps the clergy maintain it. The same divine help is also required in order to live a very rich and joyful marriage. To live with only one person for all of our lives is not something that is possible without a certain discipline, without a certain effort that we don't make by ourselves. We make together with the divine, because marriage is a sacrament. Then the second quotation comes from chapter 6, verse 2 and 3. And it says, "Do not fall into the grip of your passion, lest like fire it consume your strength. It will eat your leaves and destroy your fruits, and you will be left like a dry tree." I highlighted this passage because it reminds me very strongly of what Dante says in the Divine Comedy about the lustful. The lustful in Inferno, which is the second circle of hell, where Paolo and Francesca are met by Dante, but also the lustful in Purgatorio, at the very top of the terraces of Purgatory, where they are burning in the fire. And there is a direct correspondence here between these ancient words 200 years before Christ and the words that Dante chooses for his lustful souls purifying from their sins in Purgatory, which are burning in a fire. They're burning in a holy fire, of course, because this is Purgatory and they're going to be saved in the future. Do not fall into the grip of your passion. It is very interesting because it doesn't say that passion in itself is a bad thing. In fact, it is a good thing. It's part of what's been created as a human being. The message that it's already here in this ancient wisdom book, even before the New Testament, is do not fall into the grip of the passions. And here there is a clear distinction between what is a sin, that is basically the act, and it could be a one-off. Somebody could be a complete saint and then sin for one time, and that's the sin, the act. Versus the vice. The vice is a habit, something that has been repeated and repeated and repeated, and therefore it becomes a vice. The 7 vices of the tradition include, in fact, lust. So, just like gluttony, for example, lust falls into those sins of incontinence. We cannot contain incontinence, this instinct, this animal part of ourselves, which is literally like an animal inside of us. And just like an animal, we have to, in one way or the other, be able to train it, coach it, and tame it. So it's not a bad animal per se, but the mistake, and what wisdom is telling us to do, is the biggest mistake that you can do is to not recognize the need to train it, the need to coach it and to put it in a certain order. Because when it doesn't follow any order, it will really suck you dry of all your energies, and you won't have any more energies to do something that is good, to orient your life towards what is actually good. It will eat your leaves and destroy your fruits, and you will be left like a dry tree. It's pretty clear. And finally, still on the point of discipline, we have verse number 18 of chapter 6 that says, "My child, from your youth choose discipline, and when you have gray hair, you will find wisdom." It's talking about wisdom in an objectively positive way, good way, something that is really good to pursue. And still chapter 6, verse number 34, it says, "Stand in the company of the elders. Stay close to whoever is wise. Be eager to hear every discourse. Let no insightful saying escape you. If you see the intelligent, seek them out. Let your feet wear away their doorsteps." Just go to the house of the intelligent and sit at their doorstep until they come out so you can talk to them, you can be in their presence. It's such a beautiful image. Probably not very applicable today. We don't want to end up at the doorstep of the intelligent. But the first thing that springs into my mind reading these verses, these passages, is who are the wise? Who are the intelligent elders today in our world today? Who are they? Who do I consider them to be? And who do you consider them to be? Who are the wisest people you know? Maybe it might be your grandma. That's actually very common. Grandmas tend to have a lot of wisdom about themselves, very often more than grandpas, if I may say. Or maybe a religious person. Again, in my experience, I've noticed that good religious people, Jewish, Christian, Muslim, they have incredible wisdom about themselves, and they can impart their wisdom, which almost by osmosis can transfer from them to you if you stay in their presence. Also because everything that we let filter into our brain, in some way, most of the time we don't realize how, but they do influence us. The wisdom book is telling us, let yourself be influenced by the really wise, by the really intelligent. And we could almost translate this particular passage in modern terms and say in English, just do not use Twitter. So that's it for today. We went from speaking about the Book of Sirach, one of the wisest pieces of religious literature ever written, to speaking about Twitter. I apologize for that. I don't know how that happened. Thank you for your interest again in this mini-series, and we'll speak again the next time. There's going to be 2 more videos, and then I will close this overall. But thank you for listening. Bye-bye.